Good afternoon, Scott Luton here with you on This Week in Business History, powered by our Supply Chain Now team. And I want to welcome in our very special featured guest here today. We've got a wonderful supply chain professional, supply chain leader, and entrepreneur that is well versed in business alignment, cross-functional collaboration, and digital transformation. She brings a diverse background, experience in a variety of sectors, big focus on change management, a graduate of the University of Georgia, Go Dogs, where she was formerly named both a UGA Amazing Student and one of BET's Black Girls Rock. Our host also holds a master's in engineering management from Kennesaw State University, and she's managing director for New Generation Architects, which we're going to learn a little bit more about, and a repeat guest here at Supply Chain Now. So join me in welcoming Dyci Sfregola. Dyci, good afternoon. How you doing?
Yes, I was actually waiting for you to say that last name because you were practicing, and I said in my head, he's gonna mess it up when
Hey,
he's recording when it counts.
that's
But
right.
you did not. You got it right.
So it took me 3 hours of practice this afternoon. Now, kidding aside, I am well known for butchering names, my family's names, you name it. And sometimes my tongue and teeth just don't play nice
It's
together. But
hard. It's three
regardless,
consonants all together, and you have to roll the R. Sfregola. And my husband's Italian. Even when we're in Italy, sometimes, I'll hear people say, "Is that Italian?" when he has to spell it.
well,
So,
regardless, so nice to reconnect with you and your husband Joseph a moment ago. Really have enjoyed y'all's earlier visits with us. Your husband, amongst other things, is a talented musician. We've enjoyed that on live stream. But today, we're not only going to get to know you a little bit better, but also we're going to pick your brain on three of the biggest important business developments from three of the most important business developments from where you sit for the tough year that was 2020. But first, let's get to know you a little bit better in a nutshell. So tell us about New Generation Architects and a little bit about yourself, Dyci.
yes. So as you mentioned, I am a supply chain professional, and I fell into supply chain through logistics. So I was actually doing sales for a small 3PL. Or, well, the 3PL was large, but the businesses, the customers were focused on small and medium businesses. So got my first taste of supply chain from the logistics, the operational side. And as I was going back to school for industrial engineering and then pursuing my master's, the whole supply chain piece was just very, very interesting. I think it fit perfectly with my personality and just the things that I'm naturally good at. I'm a people person, but I also am very good at like prioritizing and multitasking, and I get bored easily. So I think there's a podcast or something called Supply Chain is Boring, which we
Yes.
all know is not true. um, so it's actually been it's been the perfect field for me. And what I've learned in doing just kind of coming into supply chain from the technology perspective of implementations, and then also being in I'm not going to say digital transformation, in the technology driven business transformation side of things, I have really learned and truly come to believe that all business decisions at some point manifest themselves in the supply chain. So everything is connected. There are still, I still talk to clients. Over the years before I started New Gen Architects, I would sit in, meetings and scopings and just having interviews with different professionals across the business. And I just really started to understand how there's still a lot of silos, not only within the supply chain, but within the entire organization, and how that cross-functional collaboration that you mentioned is really the key to achieving business excellence and strategic goals. And that can't happen without the supply chain. Without supply chain excellence, I just don't think you can achieve strategic goals at all in
Well
any
said.
type of way. So I'm biased, I'm definitely open to having the debate, but that's what I believe, and that's what we preach at New Gen Architects when we talk to companies. We start with the supply chain, as it's the heart of the business, and the technology implementations there are really starting to reveal the opportunities and the challenges that a lot of organizations have. So we started the supply chain to help organizations really achieve business transformation.
Love it. And I'm sure you are staying really busy. I think as we were arranging this interview, you've got several full plates, which is exciting as an
Yes.
entrepreneur. It's great. Sounds like you're hitting the ground running, which we're not surprised at all. So we'll have to bring you back on for maybe a mid-year update. But
Yes. You know what's funny? When I started this company, I said, oh, I'm going to start my own company because I want to work less. I want to make my own hours. So I am definitely making my own hours. I'm not working less. And you, as an entrepreneur, know that that was very naive of me, but it's very rewarding. It's very rewarding. It's very fun. I love my clients. I love my team members. I love what I do. So it's been very fun. It's a good exhausted because it's also, motherhood during COVID. I've got little Alessandro in my arms right now. So I'm sure at some point he'll wake up. Um, and hopefully he will be quiet enough so that we can continue our conversation.
hey, we look forward to seeing Alessandro as well. So you're definitely a lot of things you're balancing, and in a pandemic year or a non-pandemic year, it's never easy. But I think uh, I'm so excited for you in this entrepreneurial journey, and looking forward to tracking all the big wins and all the change you're driving you in the organization. So um, let's switch gears over to the year that was 2020, and this interview here is going to be the first of a series where we're going to be picking the brains of some of our trusted and um, well-informed members of our network, and we've been sharing with the market for a while now what's important to us, what sticks out to us. But really, DC, I'd love for you to walk us through maybe three things that took place, like business developments, news stories that took place in 2020 that you believe we're going to be talking about, and then will still be really significant, say 50, even 100 years from now. So what's the first one that comes to your mind?
It's funny when you first asked me that, or first said this is what we're going to talk about. The first thing that came to my mind was an article from the BBC that I read about cognitive load theory, and it was talking about I think the tagline was "Fight for Focus." So people are in Zoom meetings. They are at home. Kids are doing Zoom school also. So just the cognitive load of everything going on and why you might feel like you're not able to focus and you're not productive. So that's the first thing that came to my mind. The second thing was, Black Lives Matter movement, anti-racism within businesses, and the also on the supply chain side specifically, pushing more women leaders in supply chain. There were like the Women in Supply Chain Awards or in 2020, so we're in January, a couple of months ago. But what that kind of got me thinking, and this probably just goes back to my innate people nature again. Like I said, I'm a people person. I speak multiple languages. I actually have a friend that is a psychologist, and he came up with his own personality test. I was one of his guinea pigs, and he told
Really?
me, he said, you travel a lot and you want to learn these languages because you want to be able to communicate and connect with the largest amount of people possible, which probably also lends greatly to me loving consulting because it's different clients, it's a lot of different people, the team members are all different, lots of different perspectives. But what I think about in terms of business perspective, kind of an umbrella, cognitive load theory, anti-racism, women's equal pay, women in leadership, all of that for me falls under kind of the future of work. And I think it's very relevant that, in 50 years or 100 years, they're going to be looking back at 2020 and really analyzing how work changed, how we started to go more toward being work from home, or more flexibility, the 9 to 5, how we look back and we study, how work changed and women went into the workplace when there was the World War, and how things changed during the Depression. The way we work is studied. And I think that that is very relevant and will be something that, people hundreds of years from now look back and say, in 2020, look how much changed and look at what the catalyst was.
Right.
So I
Let me
think
ask you a
that,
question really quick,
yeah, go
DC, if I
ahead.
can. Given kind of the umbrella being that future work, and your first thing is cognitive load, second thing is kind of that future work, and there's a bunch of things you named under the umbrella. Do you believe here, as now we're working more, as we all know, they've shut down a lot of offices. Some technology firms have shut down over 100 offices globally, and they're not going back. To your point, it's a permanent shift in so many ways. Not for everybody, but for many. There also seems to be, hopefully in 2020, generalization here, a little more empathy. I was talking earlier today on a remote interview, and someone was warning me about their dog that's going to come in anytime now, and that's in a wonderful development that has been embraced more like never before. Do you believe, going to Black Lives Matter, anti-racism, the work we've got to do with equal opportunity, equal pay for women, these issues that we've got to make some more traction on? Do you believe that some of the empathy that we've seen generally is going to help us make progress in those areas, or do you think it's more challenging in this remote environment to drive change in those areas?
I absolutely think, and this might be optimist, idealist in me, but I absolutely think, and that's actually where I was going, with bringing your whole self to work. And I think that part of bringing your whole self to work, and everyone bringing their whole self to work, is the empathy piece. And I have gotten so many compliments and messages from client resources, just from people who have, seen me as a guest here on Supply Chain Now. Whenever little Alessandro is around, oh my goodness, like, it's so great to see, a Black woman. It's so great to see a mom. It's so great to see that you are having so much success, and that means that I too, so representation, as part of being, future of work. I think that all of it is very interconnected, even though we might not see that. So the empathy piece is absolutely going to stay. I think that even the people who were sticklers for, we must be professional, you cannot talk about that, this cannot happen, like, you must do this. I even think that they're, eventually gonna get worn down. And I mean, there are absolutely people who, say this is not the way you should use. I was reading, a woman was saying that she got in trouble for having, I think maybe she was how do I say it? I don't want to say her wrist was slapped, but her
Got
boss
some
made a
demerits or
mention.
something.
Yeah, her boss made a mention that while she was on camera, her hair wasn't necessarily, what he would have expected it to be.
Really?
so so it's one of those things that you're always going to have those people. You're always going to have those people, but in the grander scheme of a general movement toward more humanity at work, I absolutely think that that is part of the future of work. And I think that that's one of the points that people are going to look back and say, in 2020, people were at home with their kids and their barking dogs and their cats walking across the keyboard, and the plumber coming and the doorbell ringing. And what happened is that work kept going.
That's right.
Work kept going, like businesses kept making, like the world moved on, nothing happened, and people didn't go back to, being afraid to be who they are at work, which I think is going to be great for, again, women, minorities, underrepresented populations within the workplace, because there's always been that, and I speak from personal experience. You can read, of course, other studies of anecdotal data. as a parent, there's always that unspoken, or has been, that unspoken pressure of, I can't be here, but I shouldn't say it's because I have to pick up my kids. Or I shouldn't say it's because my kid is sick, because they're going to think that I'm not dedicated to
Right.
work. Or as a Black woman, I shouldn't, I probably have different, different tastes, and I want to do different things,
Right.
and I have to go along with whatever everyone else, or the greater population, the majority at work is doing. And I think that in 2020, we are seeing more, or we saw a more push for, I think I even saw someone call it the misfits. Don't look for the cultural fit, look for the misfit.
Right.
That's going to bring more diversity. It's going to open your eyes to other things. And, it's hard to be the first, or the first couple to do that. But I think in 50 years, we're going to look back and say that 2020 was a big year that a lot of that started to change.
Yeah. Gosh, so much that you shared there. I'd love to dive in and have a 3 or 4 hour conversation. It's intriguing. And I think as you described it, clearly you're studying business history. You're a student. I know you were talking about that assessment that your psychologist friend did. And you love to be around people, but clearly you're studying people and studying businesses. And I love to hear those observations. All right. So if cognitive load was the first one, second one, kind of future of work. Did you have a third one?
Yeah, I would say the technology. And I don't, who did I, oh, what was it called? It just came to mind right now, because otherwise I would have looked it up. But whatever comes after Industry 4.0, and it wasn't Industry 5.0, or maybe it was. But with the COVID disruption and manufacturers. You mentioned essential workers, or you mentioned everyone not being able to work from home.
Right.
Manufacturers and other essential workers, so hospitals, healthcare, the technology acceleration there. So a lot of companies have been, putting it off, or it was on the radar. But this is now, that COVID disruption made it a turning point for technology adoption, because they had to understand, how do we keep the factory running? How do we, I mean, supply chain was everywhere,
Right.
like
Sure.
everywhere, it still is. And manufacturing is part of that. How do we keep up with demand? How do we distribute? How do we, keep, there was even, I remember the article about the truck drivers having to get stuff from point A to point B, but all the restaurants were closed. And like, well, where do we eat?
Right.
Or
That's right.
people being afraid to open and have feed them. So it became a point of survival to adopt technology, and to understand all of your points of your supply chain, your manufacturing, your distribution, your planning. And it was definitely something that was talked about. Again, I mean, I've been in the technology space for supply chain. I've done production planning use cases for a couple of years now, but 2020 was really the year that put it on the map and on the radar for everyone.
Yep.
People who had no idea what the word supply chain meant, or anything like that. Like, it was manufacturing, supply chain, the toilet paper, that it definitely put whatever is after Industry 4.0, I think it accelerated that absolutely in 2020.
Yeah. You know, as you describe that, what comes to my mind is, systems level thinking's been around forever, but as you describe the ecosystem that allows supply chain or retail or even healthcare to happen, right? The truck driving example is a great one, because as we've seen time and time again, especially in the bigger lockdown periods, as different counties had different rules, different states had different rules. Of course, trucks are driving across through all of that, and they had to
Mm-hmm.
react differently based on
Yep.
what that local um, regulatory agency was putting in place. And there's so many different takeaways there for greater supply chain. But being able to look upstream and downstream and know that what you do here is going to have that ripple effect, and that was certainly alive and well in 2020.
Yes, the supply network versus supply chain. I think I saw that a lot in 2020.
Yeah.
ASCM came out with their digital capabilities model, which I love because very quickly you click it and you see, supplier collaboration. And if you embark on that, a project on that journey, then what is, all of the other pieces that are connected there. So that was definitely supply network was a buzzword, at least, I don't know for everyone in my network it was.
There is Alejandro. How are you? Is he's awake? And
I think he's trying to figure it out. He's trying to figure out if he's gonna wake up or not.
Well, it's good to have those options, isn't it?
Yeah.
I miss those days.
I wish. I started at 7:30 today, and I told my husband, well, I had my first meeting at 7:30 today. And yesterday I told my husband, oh, I'm starting late tomorrow.
Well, hey, let's wrap. There's so much there. I appreciate you sharing, three things that really stood out to you, trends, areas, concerns, developments. I tend to agree with you on all three of those things, that the cognitive load in and of itself. Just here recently, we had a Zoom call with a partner of ours, and we just decided to leave the video off, just have a good old fashioned conference call. And it was almost like a breath of fresh air. But nonetheless, how can folks connect with you? We want to make sure, Dyci, our listeners can connect with you and all the cool things you're doing at New Generation Architects.
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn, Dyci, and Dyci Mans. I keep my maiden name up there also because it's easier than Sfregola. So if you search Dyci Mans, you'll find me. And New Gen Architects is the business page. So it doesn't go directly to me, but the message will get filtered, or not filtered, will get passed on to me. So it's also Dyci at newgenarchitects.com, just my first name. And I will reply. I always reply. Well, that's not true. I try to reply. I took that back very quickly. I don't always reply, but I do make it a point to try to reply. And cognitive load and focus, fight for focus. I actually just recently, said to myself, you can't reply to everyone as soon as they send you a message. It is okay to wait until you have the mental capacity and a clear mind to send a coherent message back to this person.
I like that. I think pausing and finding some time to reply and respond, not just to people but all things, at the right time, when you've had a chance to think about it, and to your point, give a measured response. So I love that. And also love it. Before we even went live here today, one of your goals this weekend was to find some time to disconnect, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
let go of that.
Yeah, like you said, just let go of the project, because especially being in implementations, so we are very still much project focused. So the way that we normally come in to help a business is through a technology implementation. So there is an opportunity or a challenge that they need help with, and a technology implementation. And it's very difficult, I find, for myself, and also for clients and their resources and team members, to break that project mode, because project mode is always like, development is very fast. You got to get people trained, you got to figure out what's going on, you got to do demos, you got to get ready for go live. And then sometimes that same pace, you just keep that up, and then eventually you burn out. So it's very important to to consider that part, and just due to the nature of essentially always being on a project, I try to, make sure that I am always very aware of my cognitive load, and, just my ability to be productive. And that means that on the weekend, turn it all off.
Right.
And I sing pink fong videos with my child. So
I love it.
una tata, una tetera,
Well,
una
it's
cuchara.
it's been such a neat reconnect with you, Dyci Sfregola. Really enjoy hearing about not just what some of your observations from 2020, but putting our finger on the pulse of what you're doing now, what you're driving now, what you're leading now, and entrepreneur to entrepreneur. We're so excited, and we look forward to reconnecting with you again real soon. Thanks so much for your time.
Yes, absolutely. It's always great talking to you, Scott.
So, to our audience, hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation here with Dyci Sfregola, and make sure you check out. We're going to have her LinkedIn profile on the show notes. We'll have a link to her organization, her new venture on the show notes as well. And as she mentioned, reach out to her, especially on LinkedIn. She'll in due time she'll get back to you. But hey, hopefully you also enjoyed what she talked about in terms of some of the key takeaways in 2020 that we're going to be talking about 50 years, 100 years, maybe 1,000 years from now. Who knows? But regardless, tell us what you say. Tell us what your observations are. You can reach us at Amanda at supplychainnow.com and let us know what you're thinking. So, on behalf of our entire team here, Scott Luton signing off, challenging you like we always challenge all of our team members here every single day. Do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. On that note, we'll see you next time here on This Week in Business History. Thanks, everybody.